Hello, welcome to another weather lesson. This is our 10th weather lesson today. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm meteorologist Alexandra Cranford, and we are talking today about yet another weather topic. So, welcome to everyone who's joining me. Welcome to all the students out there who I hope are joining. We get into the kind of time frame where we're not going so much to school, of course, not going to work, staying home. So, today what we're talking about is rain. And I'm pretty excited about this topic. We are talking about rain, mainly, this is a topic that kind of came to my mind because we haven't had a lot of rain lately at all. We've had a pretty dry March. In fact, the last time we had any really significant rain of more than just a little bit, a few hundredths of an inch of rain, was on March 10th. And we got not even quite an inch of rain then in New Orleans. And before that, it was in February 20th, that we got more than an inch of rain. So really, we haven't had a lot of rain. And actually, as I was sitting down to dinner the other day, it kind of occurred to me like the weather just won't rain. It's just refusing to be anything but fairly pleasant and at this point very comfortable as we have beautiful weather today. And actually last week, even with the upper 80s, it was definitely warm, but still not extremely unpleasant, I think. We weren't in the 90s at least. So what we're talking about today is rain in a couple of different forms. So this is what I have. We're going to talk first a bit about rain gauges and how to collect rain. Then we'll talk about rain across the United States. How much yearly rain do we get at different locations? We get a lot of rain in New Orleans, of course, no surprise to anyone, right? But we're going to compare how much we get in New Orleans with a few other cities, and you might be surprised, even cities that we think of as really rainy kind of cities, you'll see what happens. New Orleans actually has more than a lot of those spots. And then we will also get into extreme rain events just a little bit. We'll touch on that briefly because occasionally certain weather conditions can happen that give us a whole lot of rain at a certain time all at once, and that can be very dangerous for flooding. So we will begin with rain gauges. So if you are a student friend joining me and you wonder how do we measure rain, this is really the idea, what we would call a rain gauge. And so this is a very simple idea. You put out a container with straight sides and you collect whatever rain falls. And if you have a measuring stick, a ruler or something like that, and you put it into the container, you can see how many inches of rain fell for a particular rain event or, over a few days. You can see exactly what's going on, especially if you have heavier rain. So, for example, this is our, actually I got this from the LSU Ag Center, so thank you to them, but this is kind of a very simple idea. You could kind of stick this in somewhere, and then you can see the different levels. So the rain would fall in here, it would get collected in this glass container or plastic container, and then you could count 1, 2, 3, 4 inches of rain. And then you would want to check this after a rain event before it begins to evaporate so that you could see how much rain you got with a particular storm or with a particular day or something like that. When we talk about inches of rain, by the way, you think about how much rain, kind of in inches. This is how we would often talk about rain. But that does translate eventually, if you think about it, into water. So what would you do to think about that? Well, you would think about how much rain as far as inches go, and then you would also need to consider the area, how big the space is upon which the rain is falling. So if you know those two things, then you can compute exactly how much water, as opposed to talking about inches of rain. It doesn't really tell you exactly how much. But if you know the area, then you can calculate that. So for an example, just to kind of give you a reference point, if you have 1 inch of rain and say 1 inch were to fall over 1 acre, that would equal about 27,000 gallons of water, and that would weigh about 113 tons. So that would be a lot of rain. Even though you think of an inch as maybe not that much, if you spread it out over an area and you get that amount over the entire area, then that translates into a lot of water. So we have talked about that sometimes in our weathercasts. By the way, for the National Weather Service, for those people who keep rain gauges and report those, they do have a special requirements. So everything is a bit more standardized if you're doing that. So you would eventually end up with what's called an SRG, a standard rain gauge, and some are a little bit different. Some have funnels, some have wind shields to kind of shield if it's in a particularly windy spot. There's certain heights and certain locations that you'd want to put your rain gauge so that it's not influenced too much, for example, under a tree or something like that, that would affect maybe how the rain were to fall into it. So there are some things to think about with that. But if you just want to get a really rough estimate, you could always get a cool little rain gauge or any kind of container, put it outside in a spot, hopefully with, plenty of open sky, and then you can put your ruler in and measure how much rain you get that way. So that is our first topic. We've talked about rain gauges, the basics of that. Now we're going to talk about how much rain we get across different spots in the United States. New Orleans gets a lot of rain. Our average rain in New Orleans annually for a whole year is about 63 inches. To compare that to a couple of other spots, you might think of maybe Seattle. We hear of Seattle in Washington, way up in the northwest part of the US, as being a rainy place. But Seattle's annual rainfall is about 37 inches because most of that is coming in the form of lighter rain, whereas New Orleans, we get very heavy thunderstorms and heavy rain events sometimes. Other spots, for example, like Miami, Florida, a spot with plenty of rainfall in the southeast, extreme southeast U.S., generally the same area as New Orleans, but much farther south and to the east, of course. Miami gets about 61, 62 inches per year, so almost or very close to what we get in New Orleans. Houston, Texas gets about 49 to 50 or so inches per year. These are averages, by the way, looking at the past 30 years. Places out west, can you think, especially students, of some places that maybe wouldn't get a lot of rain? Maybe because they're in kind of desert areas, they have more dry air, and they're not as close to, like we are, the Gulf of Mexico or close to an ocean. Spots like in the southwest do not get as much rain. For example, let's see, Phoenix gets about 8 inches per year. We get 63 and they get 8. So very different amounts depending on what's going on with the different kind of climate setup, how much moisture is in the atmosphere. Again, location, if it's close to a body of water like the Gulf of Mexico or an ocean, and also the heat, the temperature of the air, because warmer air can hold more moisture, and often spots farther to the south can, for example, in the case of the southeast U.S., get heavier rain. Las Vegas, Nevada, gets about 4 inches of rain per year. Portland, Oregon, 43 inches because it's right on the coast, right? Washington, D.C., for example, about 40 inches per year. San Diego, only a little over 10 inches per year. And same for Los Angeles, not much more than about 10 or so inches per year there. So all these different locations, these are kind of rough estimates, of course, but just wanted to give you an idea of our location across the nation and across the world that kind of influences how much rain we get. So again, in New Orleans, 63 or so inches of rain per year. Rain is a big deal here. And then finally, we will talk really quickly. This is a little bit of a short lesson, but we will go into extreme rain very quickly. Sometimes we do get really heavy rain events, especially with particular weather setups. For example, hurricanes. Sometimes with tropical systems, these storms can dump a lot of rain. In fact, you may have heard of students, maybe Hurricane Harvey over Texas in late August 2017. In that case, parts of the area kind of around Houston got about 60 inches of rain in one weather event, almost as much as New Orleans would get in a whole entire year if you looked at averages. So really staggering to think about, that much rain falling over one location just in a matter of days as opposed to a whole calendar year. Before Harvey, by the way, which set the record for rainfall, the rainfall record was 52 inches, which is also a lot, but less than 60, and that was in Hawaii. Just to kind of put it in perspective a bit, for us with, say, Katrina, we got about 10 to 12 or so inches of rain with Katrina. Of course, there were other issues with rain and flooding and so forth there, but we did get significant rain there. The May 8th, 1995 floods, that's a memorable one for some people in South Louisiana. Those brought those rain those 2 days, May 8th and May 9th, brought about 10 to 20 or so inches of rain to South Louisiana, especially kind of off to the north of Lake Pontchartrain and in parts of St. Tammany Parish and into the Mississippi coastal areas as well. A lot of rain falls with that. That one was interesting because it doesn't have to be a hurricane or a tropical system to dump a whole lot of rain over an area. Sometimes it's just weather patterns. For example, that involved a stationary front, and it involved a lot of moisture just being pumped over the same location. Sometimes we get a phenomenon called training of storms, where we get storms just being fed the moisture and just continuing to form up over the same place for a long time. So sometimes that can happen. And of course, in New Orleans, we've had some very heavy rain events lately where we've recorded up to 7 or 8 or so inches of rain just in a matter of an hour or two. So sometimes extremely heavy rain, just dumping a whole lot at once, can also happen as well. And so that's something that we watch for in the summer, and does make it a little bit stressful for sure for meteorologists when we see those thunderstorms start to set up. And, you know, we see, especially if they don't move very much and we just need to wait for them to cut themselves off and kind of turn off. Eventually those summertime thunderstorms tend to do that, but it's a kind of waiting game sometimes until they do. And finally we see the heavy rain come to an end, maybe sometimes after 3, 4, 5 plus inches of rain just in a little bit. So that is a quick lesson today. I'm almost out of my little time slot for now, but we have rain gauges that we talked about. So just kind of getting into how to measure rain across the USA, the very, very differing amounts of rain that we get in different locations, and so much in New Orleans. And then we talked a little bit about extreme rain events, which can happen with hurricanes, with tropical systems, and sometimes with other weather patterns as well. That will do it for today's weather lesson. Just a quick one today. Tomorrow we are baking, and I am really excited. Of course, I love to bake, I love the weather, and tomorrow we're going to kind of combine those. So if you're at home and you do like the weather and you like these weather lessons, think about maybe trying to bake with me tomorrow. We're going to be doing something where we're going to try some bread. So if you've never baked bread before, I used to be a little intimidated by it, but I now think it's so much fun, and I hope that you will join me for that. You need some flour, you'll need some instant yeast, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, and I think that's about it that you will need for this particular recipe tomorrow. So if you want to gather those ingredients, we will get into that tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about some science aspects of the baking as well. So I'm excited to see you guys tomorrow for my weather lesson on Thursday. It is Wednesday today. Enjoy the beautiful weather. It is so nice outside. What am I doing inside? I should have done this Facebook Live from outside, right? It's so pretty. So I hope you enjoy it. It's going to feel nice and refreshing. Tonight will be another cool night, and then tomorrow on Thursday, we'll warm up a little bit, but it still looks really good. So as we get into the weekend, we'll warm up even more. We'll have some rain chances this weekend, but as I mentioned, it's been a pretty dry stretch in New Orleans, and right now there's no really huge rain event on the way. We'll have a chance for a few spotty showers and storms though, Saturday, Sunday, and probably into Monday as well. So thank you guys. See you tomorrow, Thursday at 1 p.m. here on Facebook Live for our final weather lesson of this week. And I hope to see you then. Have a good rest of the day.